The Summer Birds by Penelope Farmer, Part 1, 7. Charlotte wondered if Emma would give them away by her impatience. She jiggled excitedly, but except for one or two suspiciously soaring jumps, she managed to hold herself till they turned the corner up the dusty lane and the high hedges hid them from sight. Then she sprang into the air, and Charlotte, fearful that her own knack would have gone, sprang cautiously after. But the knack had not gone. She chased Emma along the top of the hedge, looking down at the brambles and the early roses, down farther at the cow parsley, and the banks of grass above the dusty lane, and suddenly a startled bird rose up out of the hedge and skimmed away from them with startled eye and beat of wing, and left below a nest filled with naked baby birds, gape-beaked for food. Looking back, Charlotte saw the sun-warmed village, the one television aerial belonging to baby Fumpkin's parents, sticking up amid red chimneys. All about the buttercup meadows were extra patches of sun. The hills rose around behind, a glint of sea showing through them. Far away, it was a view Charlotte saw every day from Grandfather Elijah's garden, but never before from airy space above a hedge. So held by it was she that she forgot she did not know how to hover and had to come heavily to the ground in the lane to save herself from landing amid the thorns of the hedge. She was shut in again. The view was gone. Thus common sense came back to her. "Emma!" she called urgently to her sister, who was still skimming carelessly along the hedge-top. "Emma, come down. Somebody might see you there." "You are an old fuss-pot, Char," Emma said sulkily. And then, "But I did promise. Perhaps we'd better be careful." So though they flew home, they stayed in the lane itself and were cautious around corners. But it took so much longer to come up the lane, playing as they did, that they were late for tea. Even lazy Miss Gosling was cross with them, mainly because, being lazy, she liked a long rest between tea and supper. She threatened to report them to their grandfather, who had spent that day in the town and was not waiting to scold them himself. Miss Gosling's chest heaved in time with her creaky voice as she scolded, and she tugged at her red and purple beads till they snapped apart and rolled all over the floor. Emma giggled, but Charlotte, seeing a chance for regaining favor, said tactfully, "Oh, poor Miss Gosling," and bent down to pick them up, tugging at Emma's skirt as she did so to make her do the same. By the time they had found every bead, Miss Gosling had almost forgotten why she was scolding. She gave them some sweet stale biscuits as a reward, and stayed so long talking while they ate their tea that they began to burst with fear there'd be no time for flight before bedtime. "Emma," said Charlotte, when at last they were outside, "Emma, we've got to be careful. Grown-ups are going to be a nuisance." "I know," said Emma, serious for once, and sucking her right thumb in the left-hand corner of her mouth, which was a sign that she was thinking. "They mustn't suspect anything," continued Charlotte. "They'd only say it was dangerous or something, and we mustn't speak to strange boys." So they pledged their own pledge to be careful, crossing each other's hearts with fingers, dipped in the mossiest of the rain barrels by the far greenhouse. But caution was hard that night, and nobody came. They explored the garden from the air, and it was new, though they knew it so well. Never before had they seen the tops of the trees in the garden, or startled the birds that nested in them. Astonished rooks rose heavily, flapped and cawed, and settled back again, cawing softly. "Well, bless my buttons, if they bain't as agile as a pair of little misses I ever seed, said warty old Bomble, suddenly catching sight of their faces peering at him from the topmost branches of the tallest copper beech tree on the wide lawn. "And wouldn't I have thought they'd have had to have flown to get to the top of that old fellow?" And that is the end of chapter 7.